So here I was, my first day at my new job, standing outside having a quick cig before entering the huge manor home. I am 36 and finally after 4 years I got a change of career and out of that stuffy office, and now I got a more hands-on job. I got my new job as a care worker at a retirement home. I had those first day nerves. I previously had the privilege of meeting the staff during my interview, so after we greeted one another and had a small chat with a cup of tea. Donna was finishing her shift of the day as I was starting my night shift. There was 4 workers for the day and only needed 2 for the night shift, 1 for medical and other for support. As I passed Donna leaving in the hallway, who was quite old and well built for an elder lady of 50-odd years old. She abruptly stopped and held my arm gently and said, "You will be fine, honey. Some of the residents tend to exaggerate, so try not to pay much attention to everything they say." I replied, "Okay, really? Is that maybe due to the meds?" in the hope to chuckle it off. Donna then looked at me with a grin and said, "Maybe, sweetie." She then patted my arm, letting go and grasping her handbag she left, so I began cleaning. I was on my shift with Wanda, but she was doing the washing down in the basement. The huge manor home was warm and cozy and had central heating throughout the building, but I was particularly hot, mostly because I was keeping busy and not really used to running around such a huge building. With me being so hot and bothered, I went outside to get fresh air. I felt this was well deserved after doing the cleaning and putting residents to bed, and I had to be seen trying to be welcoming and kept up the friendly chatting with them to make them feel relaxed and comfortable. It must have been a good 4 to 5 hours into the shift. I was in need of the break. I was outside smoking and taking the time to appreciate the building. It was a good couple of 100 years old, and I was thinking how lovely it would be to own a home of this size. It had character with statues engraved into the huge doorways. I couldn't speak much for the gardens out back though, as it was the winter season and the leaves had left the trees bare. After finishing the cig, I went back inside and making sure to securely close and lock the door behind me. As I turned around, I saw in the distance down the hall, a frail old woman in a white nightgown with what looked like faint pink flowers on it. I thought, oh, a resident has got up out of bed. I was struggling with the names at this point, as there were 11 residents in total, so I couldn't yell to her to try by time for me to catch up. So I hastily followed down the hall, quickly looking up at the grandfather clock to check the time. It was around 2:20 a.m. Continuing to walk down the hall, I lost sight of her but assumed she had turned the corner into the back dining room, as there was only one other door at the bottom of the hall, which were a fire exit, and an alarm would set off if indeed any one of the residents or staff would go out that way. As soon as I got there, I looked around the room but couldn't see anyone. Really confused by this, I went to reach for the light switch by the side of the door. Nope, no one was in the room, thinking maybe she went to another room and I just didn't see, but knowing that there was only a closet door, the fire exit, and the big huge double doors which would lead you back upstairs to the second floor, as it was a dual staircase at each end of the manor house, but these doors was heavy and would make a slamming noise when shut, to which I never heard. But as I was thinking, I have noticed that there was an impression into one of the sofa chairs and the pillow was now flat. I just thought maybe Wanda had been in the room whilst I was outside having a cig break. However, I did find it a little unusual, as I was told staff would have their breaks in the kitchen area, due to having a cup of tea or coffee in there, especially when the cleaning had been done. After tidying the sofa chair again and putting the pillow straight, I turned around, heading out the room, turning the light off as I went. Straight away my back facing the room got a sudden and sharp cold snap. I got goosebumps on the back of my neck and my hair began to feel almost static. I sharply turned my head around, my cheeks quickly went cold. I hastily began to trot back down the hallway, peering into the dark unlit kitchen. As I did, my body temperature returned to normal. The cobweb feeling at the back of my head disappeared. Feeling calm once again, I composed myself, rubbing my face with my hands, thinking, where's Wanda? Surely she's finished with washing the bins and clothes by now. I went into the main television room towards the front of the manor. I could then see Wanda coming down the stairs. She had been up on the second floor. "Hi Wanda," I smiled to try give a positive impression. She got to the last step, being careful with her footing as she was carrying an empty basket. Wanda is a short in stature but broad and had a strong head of gray hair, bouncy and curly, soft white and light wrinkly skin. She was Polish and had a thick accent but managed to speak English very well. "Phew," she sighed with relief. "Oh lovey, be a dear and stick the kettle on, would you? I've not stopped since I started." I then quizzed her and confirmed what she just said. "So you've not had a single break yet?" "No lovey," was her reply. Instantly thinking, well, who's been in the dining room? I quizzed her again as we made our way to the kitchen. "Did you have to put a resident to bed?" "No, they are asleep. I've been in every room before I come down to put fresh towels in their drawers before morning," she replied. My face suddenly changed to a more serious tone. As you can imagine, I couldn't really say to Wanda or explain what I had saw in fear of making myself look a fool, so we enjoyed a good chat together in the kitchen, knowing that the job is done and we only had to wait for any residents' buzzers for the remaining of the shift in case they needed us. Well, returning to work for the next few shifts, things would get stranger, and many of the staff had opened up, also explaining they've all had their own visions of the unexplained whilst working at the place, so this made me at ease, thinking, well, I'm not cracking up then. But one night in particular gave me the shock of a lifetime enough, so I unfortunately left the place. They won't let our team now investigate the place in fear of getting a bad reputation, but my story goes as followed. The usual routine had been done, the cleaning and sorting out the residents, feeding and such, and putting them to bed. It got to around 3:05 a.m. on another shift with Wanda. I walked down the hall to head into the laundry room, basement, and I could hear Wanda talking softly. As I began slowly walking down trying to listen to what was being said, she suddenly stopped. She was sat down folding the bedding. I had asked her if she would like a brew. She said soon when she comes up. I also asked if she would like some help, to which she didn't, so I wandered off back upstairs, carefully trying to listen as I went in case she resumed talking again. As I got to the top of the stairs and closed the door behind me, the buzzer alarm had went off in room 13. No one should have been in room 13. From room 12 to 15 was empty. Puzzled, I went to go check in case a resident is walking around. Once going upstairs, I got that frosty cold spot chill again. If you've ever experienced ghost visits before, then I'm sure you know it. With me growing ever more worried, I reached for the door handle, twisting it, and opened. No one was in the room, yet the books on the dressers had been knocked over. I placed them back and went downstairs. Once reaching the bottom, it had gone off again. It is tiring, keep going up and down, so being annoyed by this, I stormed back up. Quickly throwing open the door, the books were laying on the floor. Now I really was getting worried. I began picking them up until I saw a shadow shoot across the floor from where the gap in the door had left light. I turned to look but missed it. Placing the books back, I looked out the door again in case resident or Wanda had walked past. No one and no noise from the doors leading downstairs. Then I heard wooden creaking. Turning around, the old-style rocking chair had began rocking back and forth. Freaked out by this, I began to back up to the door, walking out the room. I closed the door. As I did, I heard two loud thuds hitting the door and what sounded like something hitting the floor. But the curiosity had got the better of me. I thought, no, I must go back in and see what it is. Still keeping my hand on the door handle, I opened it, and there was the books again, seeming as though they had been thrown at the door, laying on the ground. I didn't attempt to pick them up this time, but rather went to the window to see if it were locked. As soon as I stood halfway into the room, the door behind me had slammed shut. I made a dart to open it, but try as I might, it just wouldn't budge. I began yelling, "Let me out!" tugging as hard as I could. I looked back and the bed had began to shake, the chair rocking back and forth again at a faster pace. Then the door suddenly gave way. I rushed through, leaving the door open as I ran to the staircase. Pushing through the double doors and not looking back, I got to the stairs to see an old woman in a white gown looking directly at me with a very nasty and angry face, pointing a very bony finger at me with rotten sharp-looking dirty teeth. She croaked a voice saying, "You get out now." My heart by this point felt like it was going to explode. I turn around to head for the other stairs, racing down the hallway, diving through the doors, stumbling as I went down, grabbing onto the rails. I got to the bottom and swung open the doors, to discover Wanda right there. "Are you okay, lovey? You look startled." "Here, sit down." She pulled over a stool, to which I sat, grasping my chest, struggling to catch my breath. I was trying to point upstairs. After a few minutes had passed by and I began to calm, still shaking with fear, I demanded we go outside to talk. Wanda was very kind to do so, as it was freezing outside. But I felt a whole lot better we did. I began to tell her what had happened. Wanda's reply, "Oh, that'll be Mavis, evil and rotten to the core that one is, doesn't like new people." Stunned by what she said, I chosen to ignore it. But it later played on my mind. There's no Mavis resident on the books, nor no medication for her, and I have seen and talked to all the residents at the place. The shift had finally ended and I went home. Vowing to never return to the place again, I had to resign, and for fear of explaining why to the boss and getting a bad background record when applying for new work, I had no choice but to lie and say I had medical issues that would prevent me from going to work anymore. They didn't contest it, so now I am a true believer after the whole experience.